When I woke up from an 8-hour and 40-minute spine surgery, I expected pain, a dry throat, maybe a nurse telling me not to move. I did not expect 68 missed calls, or my father's voicemail saying he had sold my condo while I was unconscious to pay for my sister's wedding. He said he had handled the signature. He said $486,000, like my home was just a number he could spend. But my name is Corinne Vale. I was a surgical nurse before I became a patient, and before that, I was an Army medic. I knew one thing my family forgot. Hospitals document everything, every drug, every breath, every minute. And at 2:13 p.m., the deed said I stood in front of a notary. But at 2:13 p.m., the hospital record said a machine was breathing for me. Chapter 1. The Voic email. While I was still under anesthesia, I woke up to the sound of my own breathing before I understood where I was. Not normal breathing, not the kind you take for granted. It scraped up my throat in thin, painful strips, like somebody had dragged sandpaper through my windpipe and left the rest of me pinned beneath wet concrete. My eyes opened to white ceiling tiles, fluorescent light, and the soft electronic rhythm of machines that knew more about my body than I did in that moment. For a few seconds, I could not remember my own name. Then I remembered the hospital, then the surgery, then the pain. My name was Corinne Vale. I was 36 years old. I was a surgical nurse at Kettering Memorial Surgical Center, and before that I had been an Army medic from 2010 to 2015. I knew the smell of recovery rooms. I knew the rhythm of monitors. I knew the strange gray place between anesthesia and full consciousness, where your mind wakes up before your body agrees to come with it. My back felt like it belonged to someone else. There was a brace locked around me, holding me stiff from my ribs down toward my hips. My mouth was dry, my throat burned from the tube. Every swallow felt like a punishment. A nurse stepped into view, dark hair pulled tight, badge swinging from her scrub top. Priya Nair. I knew her by sight, even through the haze. PACU nurse, sharp, calm, no wasted motion. You are awake, Corinne, she said softly. Surgery went well. Dr. Mercer was happy with the fusion, but you need to stay still. I tried to answer, but my voice came out broken. How long? 8 hours and 40 minutes, she said. You did well, but listen to me. No driving, no bending, no twisting, no lifting. Not even something that feels light. You will need help at home for a while. At home, that word moved through me slowly, almost warmly at first. My condo. Oakline Terrace. The recovery bed I had set up in the living room because I knew the bedroom would be too hard to get to. The shower chair I had ordered from Amazon and hated because it made me feel old. The bathroom rails I had installed myself because I did not want to ask Gerald for help and hear him sigh like my independence was an inconvenience. The freezer meals stacked in labeled containers. The medication chart taped to the refrigerator. I had planned everything. That was what I did. In the Army, in the OR, in my own life. I planned because planning kept people alive. Priya reached toward the tray beside my bed. Your phone kept buzzing while you were under. I put it on silent, but I think your family has been trying to reach you. She handed it to me carefully. The screen blurred, then sharpened. 68 missed calls. My father, my mother. Brooke, my father again. Brooke again. My mother 3 times in a row. A cousin from Columbus. An aunt I had not spoken to since Easter. My father again and again and again. For one stupid second, I thought something had happened to someone else. Then I saw the voicemail, Gerald Vale. My father was 64, a small real estate contractor who liked to call himself a developer when he was around richer men. He had built out strip malls, renovated dentist offices, flipped tired little commercial buildings around Dayton, and spent most of my life speaking in the voice of a man who believed paperwork was something he could bend if he knew the right person. I pressed play. His voice came through warm and steady, the way he sounded when he wanted you to believe panic was childish. Do not panic, sweetheart. Your mother and I took care of it. We sold the condo. Brooke's wedding could not wait, and you were unconscious, so I handled the signature. $486,000. It is done. We will explain everything when you are stronger. The room did not spin. I almost wished it had. Instead, everything became very clear. The monitor beside me kept beeping. Priya was adjusting something near my IV. Somewhere down the hall, a patient coughed. A cartwheel squeaked against tile. The world kept moving like my father had not just told me he sold my home while I was unconscious. My condo, not family property, not a spare asset, not an emergency fund with walls, mine. I did not cry, not then. Maybe because the anesthesia was still holding parts of me underwater. Maybe because pain had made my body too busy for tears. Or maybe because 12 years in operating rooms and 5 years in military medicine had trained me to do one thing first when something went wrong. Assess who signed, when did they sign, What document did they use? Who notarized it? Why would my father say he handled the signature if the transaction was clean? And where was I at the exact moment my name appeared on whatever paper he had pushed across whatever desk? Priya looked at my face and paused. Do you want me to call your mother? No, the word came out rough but clear. Prip's eyes narrowed with concern, not judgment. Okay, what do you need? I need the complete anesthesia record, she blinked. Not the discharge summary, I said, forcing each word through my throat. The full record. Induction time, intubation time, vitals, OR notes, medication log. Every timestamp. Priya studied me for one long second. She knew me well enough to know I was not confused. I was not drugged into nonsense. I was a surgical nurse asking for the one document that could tell me where my body had been when someone else claimed my hand had signed away my life. I can help you request it, she said. You will need medical records, but I can note it. Thank you. My fingers were trembling, but not from fear anymore. Oakline Terrace condominiums had not been impressive to anyone but me. 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, 1 narrow balcony, a view of the parking lot and a strip of Ohio sky that turned gold in October. I bought it in June of 2018, when I was 30. The sale price had been $312,000, which felt impossible until I signed the mortgage and realized impossible things become real when you agree to pay for them every month. By September of 2024, it was worth about $486,000. I had around $284,000 in equity. But those numbers were not the reason my chest hurt. That condo was every double shift I picked up when other nurses went home. It was every lunch I packed instead of buying takeout. It was every vacation I postponed because the roof assessment had come due, because the HVAC needed servicing, because the HOA fees had increased again. It was the first door in my adult life that opened because my name was on the deed and nobody else's. I had built my recovery there before I let Dr. Simon Mercer cut into my spine. A bed in the living room, a basket of clean socks within reach, bottled water on the side table, stool softeners, muscle relaxers, anti-nausea meds, all labeled in my own handwriting, shower chair in the bathroom, rail by the toilet, freezer meals stacked by date. I had made that home into a place where a woman could come back from surgery without begging anyone to take care of her. And my father had called it done. My family had always loved that word when it came to me. Strong Corinne is strong. Corinne can handle it. Corinne understands. Corinne does not need what Brooke needs. Brooke Vale was 29, my younger sister, and she had always been treated like tenderness itself would break if the world touched her too hard. She was marrying Evan Caldwell, 31, whose father, Edmund Caldwell, owned a chain of dealerships around Dayton, and whose mother, Patricia, sat on charity boards and country club committees with women who wore pearls like armor. The wedding was supposed to be at Brookhaven Country Club. Gerald cared about that more than he admitted. He cared that Edmund Caldwell would see white linens, fresh flowers, a full bar, and a family that looked solvent. He cared that Patricia Caldwell would not whisper that the veils were stretched thin. My father had spent years being the man who knew contractors, lenders, permit officers, title people. He could not bear standing in a room with richer people and looking small, so he made me smaller instead. The old power of attorney had been my mistake. Years earlier, before a deployment, I had signed an emergency power of attorney naming Gerald so he could handle bills, lease issues, or paperwork if I was injured overseas. Back then, it felt practical. Back then, I believed my father understood the difference between protecting my life and accessing it. After I left the Army, the document disappeared into a file box and then into memory. 2 days before surgery, on September 15, 2024, I remembered it. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was the old medic in me doing pre-op checks on my own life. Either way, I called a mobile notary in Kettering and signed a revocation of power of attorney. I scanned the signed and notarized revocation at 8:46 that evening, emailed it to myself, and copied an old jaggy contact from my Army days because the Army had taught me never to trust one copy of anything important. Then I printed it. That night, I drove to my parents' house and handed the paper directly to Gerald in their kitchen. Carol was there, standing by the counter, rinsing grapes in a colander. She saw the paper. She saw Gerald take it. He nodded like I had handed him a grocery receipt and set it beside the fruit bowl. Just cleaning up old deployment paperwork before surgery, I told him, good idea. He said that was all. I thought that door was closed. I did not know that somewhere before my surgery, Gerald, Roy Maddox, and Pell and Harbor Title Services had already been preparing a closing package. I did not know that because the buyer was cash, there would be no mortgage delay to slow them down. I did not know the final signature and notary step had been timed for the day I would be lying face down on an operating table. I did not know any of that yet. All I had was a hospital bed, a body I could not sit up without help, a voicemail from my father, and the terrible sentence he had left inside it. I handled the signature. I played it one more time. This time, I did not hear an explanation. I heard evidence. If my family had used my name while a tube was still in my throat, then the weakest moment of my life had left a record they could not bully, guilt, charm, or rewrite. I stared at the ceiling tiles above my hospital bed and let the machines keep counting what my family had forgotten to fear. If they put my name on a deed while a machine was breathing for me, then the hospital record would say what I could not, and I was going to make sure someone listened. Chapter 2. The condo I could not go home to 4 days later. Discharge did not feel like freedom. It felt like being released from one room I could not control into a life someone else had already entered without permission. Dr. Simon Mercer came in before noon with his tablet tucked under one arm and the careful expression surgeons use when they are trying not to scare a patient who already knows too much. The fusion looks good, Corinne, but good does not mean easy. You will use the walker. You will not drive. No bending, no twisting, no lifting. If something weighs more than a half gallon of milk, it is too heavy, and I do not want you alone for long stretches the first week. I nodded because arguing with post-op instructions would have been stupid, and because my back hurt too much to waste energy pretending I was stronger than bone and metal. A discharge coordinator came in after him with a clipboard and a practiced smile. And where will you be recovering? The pen in her hand hovered above the form. For 1 second, my mind went to Oakline Terrace like it always did. 3rd floor, narrow balcony, recovery bed in the living room, medication chart on the fridge, clean sheets waiting, the shower chair I hated but had bought anyway. Then my father's voice cut through it. We sold the condo. I swallowed, and my throat still burned. I do not know yet, I said. The coordinator looked up before she could ask anything else. Tamara Ellis stepped into the doorway carrying 2 tote bags, a travel pillow, a pharmacy sack, and the kind of anger only a nurse can hide from a patient and still radiate through the room. Tamara was 38, an ICU charge nurse, and my closest friend since nursing orientation. She took one look at my face and then at the discharge paperwork. She is coming with me, she said. Short-term rental, 2 miles from here, no stairs. The coordinator looked relieved to have an answer. I looked at Tamara and realized I had not taken a full breath since the question. Tamara helped me into the passenger seat like I was made of glass and bad decisions. Every bump in the road sent a sharp white line through my spine. I watched Kettering slide past the window, the drugstore, the gas station, the strip of restaurants near the hospital, ordinary places full of people whose fathers had probably not sold their homes while they were unconscious. The rental was small, clean, and anonymous. Beige sofa, narrow kitchen, 1 bedroom, no memories. Tamara moved through it fast, setting my pills in order, putting water within reach, folding blankets into support wedges. Then she stopped at the foot of the bed and asked the question nobody in my family had asked. Where are your clothes? I closed my eyes. She kept going, softer this time. Your recovery bed, your file box, the bathroom setup, your deployment binder, the original revocation. Corinne, where is all of it? In the condo. The words sounded flat because the truth was too large to fit inside them. Tamara's jaw tightened. So they did not just take the title. No, I said. They locked me out of the place I built to survive this. That was when I called Louis Brennan. I had met Brennan once years earlier, when a coworker went through an ugly divorce and said he was the only lawyer in Dayton who did not talk to women like they were emotional weather systems. He was 52, a real estate attorney with a calm voice and no appetite for family excuses. I gave him the facts the way I would give a surgical handoff. Surgery September 17th. Spinal fusion, 8 hours and 40 minutes. Old power of attorney from my Army years. Revocation signed and notarized September 15th. Scanned at 8:46 p.m. and emailed to myself. Paper copy handed to my father that night. Voicemail from him after surgery saying he sold my condo for my sister's wedding and handled the signature. Brennan did not interrupt until I finished. Do you still have the voicemail? Yes. Call log? Yes. The revocation was notarized? Yes. You have the scan and email metadata? Yes. Do you know the buyer? No. Title company? Not yet. Do you know whether the deed has recorded? No. His voice stayed even, but something in it sharpened. All right. First, save the voicemail in more than one place. Forward it to me. Do not delete the call log. Do not text your family about legal details. Do not threaten anyone. If they call, listen, write down what they say, and keep it short. Your father's voicemail may be our first admission. If he said he handled the signature, he gave us intent, timeline, and a statement in his own voice. Tamara sat beside me with her notebook already open. Brennan continued. I am sending preservation letters today to Pell and Harbor Title Services, your father, and the buyer once I identify them. Nobody touches your belongings. Nobody moves your file box. Nobody changes locks without creating another problem. If they do, that becomes damages. I looked at Tamara. She wrote belongings in block letters and underlined it twice. Brennan said he would also prepare a referral to the Dayton Financial Crimes Unit, but he wanted the closing documents first. He was careful about the words, but not gentle with the meaning. This is not a family disagreement, Corinne. This may be property fraud, forgery, misuse of a revoked power of attorney, notary fraud, and title misconduct. For the first time since the voicemail, I felt something solid under my feet, even though I was lying flat with a brace holding my spine still. By late afternoon, Brennan had contacted the Montgomery County Recorder's office. A clerk named Mara Jensen confirmed that a deed had been recorded against my unit at Oakline Terrace. She could provide the recorded deed, the filing timestamp, and instructions to request the full record package. That word landed hard. Recorded, my home had become a document in somebody else's stack. Tamara and I made an inventory from memory. Not every plate or towel, just the things that mattered now. The recovery setup I had built before surgery. The file box in the hall closet. The deployment binder. My mortgage records. My laptop. The paper copy of the revocation. A few family photos I suddenly hated myself for still wanting. I was halfway through describing the file box when there was a knock at the rental door. Tamara looked through the peephole and whispered, "It is them." Carol Vale came in first with grocery store flowers and a casserole dish wrapped in foil. My mother was 62, a former office manager at a dental clinic, and she had perfected the concerned mother face in church basements and waiting rooms. Gerald stood behind her, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes moving around the rental like he was assessing square footage. "Oh, honey," Carol said, setting the casserole on the counter. "You look exhausted. This is exactly why you should not be making decisions right now." "I am not confused," I said. "You are on pain medication." "I am on pain medication, not a personality transplant." Tamara made a small sound behind me that might have been approval. Gerald cleared his throat. "We did what had to be done. The vendors needed payment. Brookhaven needed the deposit. The dress balance was due. The Cancun block was about to fall through. I handled everything." That word again, howled. Carol came closer, lowering her voice like softness could make theft sound maternal. "It is just a condo, Corinne. You are alive. Your sister only gets one wedding." I stared at her. "It was the condo I was supposed to recover in," Gerald sighed. "You have always been the strong one. Brooke needed this more than you did." There it was, the sentence my family had spent years polishing into a key. Strong one. The one who did not need help. The one who could be emptied because she would refill herself later. I did not raise my voice. "Who notarized my signature?" Gerald's eyes shifted. Carol stepped in too quickly. "This is not the time." "It is exactly the time. We can talk after the wedding. Who notarized it?" Gerald looked at the floor, then toward the window. "Roy handled the paperwork end of it." The name sat in the room like a dropped instrument. Roy Maddox, I knew him. 66, developer, Gerald's business partner for decades. He had eaten Thanksgiving turkey at my parents' table and talked through dessert about strip malls and permits. He knew Riverside Commons had been bleeding money. He knew my father hated looking weak in front of richer men. Carol's face tightened as soon as Gerald said it. "The wedding is in 19 days, she said, trying to pull the room back under her control. "The venue is booked, the dress is paid for. The Caldwells have already invited people. If you do anything rash, you will destroy Brooke." I looked at my mother, then my father. "If you wanted to protect Brooke, you should not have put my name on a deed while I was unconscious." Nobody answered that. After they left, the rental felt colder. Tamara locked the door and came back to the bed. My hands were shaking now, not because I was scared, but because pain and fury use the same muscles when your body is too weak to separate them. "Do you need to sleep?" she asked. I said. "But first I need the list." Tamara handed me the notebook. I wrote headings slowly because my fingers still felt clumsy. Voicemail, Papo, revocation, buyer title company. Notary, medical record, belongings, money trail. Each word looked small on the page, but together they became something my family had not expected me to have. A structure. Near midnight, Brennan's first email came through. The county had confirmed the deed was recorded. The scan would arrive in the morning, buyer name included. I read that line 3 times, then I looked at the inventory list Tamara and I had made. and something colder than anger settled in me. My family thought they had taken my condo. What they had actually done was lock the original proof, the disturbed file box, the recovery setup, and the entire scene of what they had stolen inside one address, an address that could be named in a legal filing, an address that could be preserved, an address that, sooner or later, someone besides them was going to have to open. Chapter 3. The buyer, the money trail, and 2:13 p.m. The scan came in at 8:17 the next morning, while Tamara was crushing my anti-nausea pill into applesauce because my stomach had decided it hated both food and justice. My phone buzzed on the side table. Louis Brennan's name lit up the screen. Tamara picked up the laptop and angled it toward me so I did not have to twist. "Ready?" she asked. "No," I said. "Open it anyway." Brennan appeared on video from his office, gray suit jacket off, tie loosened, a stack of printed documents beside him. He looked like a man who had been awake long enough to stop caring about coffee. "I have the recorded deed, the settlement statement, the notary block, and part of the title file," he said. "Corinne, I need you to listen carefully. Do not react too fast." That was lawyer language for "this is worse than you think." He shared his screen. The buyer's name sat in the middle of the document like it had been waiting for me. Roy Maddox. For a second, the rental went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Roy had been in my parents' life for as long as I could remember. 66 years old, developer, golfer, the kind of man who wore quarter-zip sweaters over collared shirts and spoke about buildings like they were poker's chips. He had eaten Thanksgiving dinner at our table. He had told me more than once that nursing was noble work, always in the tone of a man who thought noble meant underpaid and useful. "He bought it?" Tamara said. Brennan nodded. "All cash." My throat tightened. "How much?" Brennan clicked to the settlement statement, $318,000. I stared at the number. "No," I said. "My father said 486. There is no 486,000 in this file," Brennan said. "No lender, no appraisal matching that, no funds at that amount. Your father used the market value in the voicemail because it sounded legitimate. But the actual sale price was 318. That was not a mistake, Corinne. That was the number he wanted you to believe while the real number moved through the closing file." Tamara leaned closer to the screen. "That condo is worth almost 500. "Exactly," Brennan said. "All cash buyer, below market. Buyer is a close associate of your father. Title company is Pelham Harbor, which appears to have a long relationship with your father's business. This is not one red flag. It is a field of them." Then he opened the wire instructions. I had spent years reading medication orders, blood loss estimates, instrument counts. I knew how a bad truth looked when it was reduced to clean lines and numbers. $152,000 had been treated as a private debt offset between Gerald Vale and Roy Maddox. Another wire went to Brookhaven Country Club, another to a bridal boutique for Brooke's dress balance, another toward a Cancun honeymoon block. A smaller amount moved through an account connected to Riverside Commons project. I could feel my pulse in my spine. "So the wedding was not the reason," I said. Brennan's face softened, but his voice stayed steady. "It was one reason. It was also the cover. Gerald's debt was the engine." That sentence formed in my head before anyone said it. Brooke's wedding was the pretty box they put around it. My recovery bed, my mortgage, my years of double shifts, my name on a deed, all of it had become a way for my father to pay Roy and look respectable in front of the Caldwells. By noon, I wanted to see Roy's face. Brennan told me not to go. Not because I had no right to confront him, but because I had just come out of spine surgery and because angry conversations can become evidence for the wrong side if you are not careful. "Do not accuse him," Brennan said. "Do not threaten him. Do not ask questions you do not want answered. If you go to listen." Tamara told me I was insane. I told her she was probably right, but I also told her I was not going alone. I was not going to raise my voice, and I was not going to stay longer than my body could handle. I only wanted to hear what kind of man could buy a home from the father of a woman who was lying unconscious in an operating room. Tamara drove me to a low brick office building in Miamisburg. The sign outside said Maddox Development Group. The parking lot was half empty. I moved slowly with my cane, brace hidden under a loose sweater, every step reminding me that my body was still in recovery even if my life had been dragged into combat. Roy came out of his office smiling like we were meeting about carpet samples. "Corinne," he said, "you should be resting. You bought my condo." His smile thinned. "Your father had authority. Pelham Harbor handled it. Cash was clean, deed recorded. I am sorry the timing upset you, but that is family business. Why did you pay $318,000 for a condo worth almost $486? His eyes flickered once. Real estate prices are opinions. From a woman who was in spine surgery? He looked past me toward Tamara, then back to me. Your father and I go back a long time. He owed me. This squared part of it. There it was. Not guilt, not apology, just arithmetic. My home squared your debt. He folded his hands on the desk. I would be careful, Corinne. Recorded deeds are not undone because someone has regrets. I was under anesthesia. Good luck proving anything from a hospital bed. Tamara's hand tightened on the strap of her purse. I did not move. I did not have to. Roy had just given me the sentence I would remember when the hospital record destroyed him. Back at the rental, Brennan had more. The title file contains a copy of your old power of attorney, he said. But here is the problem for them. The deed was not signed as Gerald Vale, attorney in fact for Corinne Vale. It has your direct signature. He enlarged the page. My name sat there in ink that looked almost like mine if you had never watched me sign a chart at 6:42 in the morning with a surgeon asking for room turnover. The C was too round. The line was too careful. My real signature leaned forward, sharp from years of signing quickly in the oar. This one looked like someone had practiced being me. Tamara whispered. That is not your hand. No, I said. It is somebody pretending my hand had time. Brennan clicked again. The notary block says you personally appeared before Nadine Keller, notary public, on September 17th at 2:13 p.m. I looked at the time, 2:13 p.m., he continued. I requested the notary journal. It also lists you at 2:13. The journal signature does not match your normal signature either. Nadine Keller appears to do regular work with Pell and Harbor, so they used the old PO as cover, I said. But forged my direct signature on the deed. That is my read, Brennan said. Old POA to make the file feel familiar. Forged signature to make the deed look clean. Notary acknowledgement to claim you appeared. This is not a mistake. It is a chain. Later that afternoon, the complete anesthesia record arrived. Priya had helped me request the right file, not the polite summary hospitals give patients who do not know what to ask for. This was the real record, the one with times and vitals and medications and notes written by people who had no reason to lie for or against my family. Dr. Helena Ortiz, the anesthesiologist, had charted everything. Induction before noon, intubation before noon, prone position. General anesthesia maintained. Vitals logged throughout the case. At 2:10 p.m., Dr. Simon Mercer was working at the second spinal level. At 2:13 p.m., patient intubated, prone, under general as anesthesia. At 2:15 p.m., vitals stable, procedure ongoing. Brennan put the two records side by side on the screen, notary journal. Corinne Vale personally appeared at 2:13 p.m., anesthesia record. Patient intubated, prone, under general anesthesia at 2:13 p.m. For a moment I forgot the pain in my back, not because it was gone, but because another feeling had risen above it, clarity. This was no longer my word against my father's. It was no longer strong daughter against respectable parents. It was timestamp against timestamp. One paper said I stood before a notary. The other said a machine was breathing for me while a surgeon had his hands inside my spine. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia Bradford, one of the OR nurses at Kettering. Heard you are home-ish. Tell me what you need. I hesitated, then told her part of it. Her answer came fast. Corinne, everyone in that OR knows you. You are the queen of timeouts, counts, and charting. If anyone can bury somebody with documentation, it is you. I almost laughed. It hurt too much, so it came out as a breath. Brennan was not finished. The 2:13 issue is strong, he said. Very strong. But to make the deed collapse cleanly, I want the revocation, the signed one, the notarized one. Anything with date proof. The paper copy was in my deployment binder, I said, in the file box, in the condo. Tamara looked at me. The same thought hit both of us. The file box had been moved. The paper could already be gone. That night I did not sleep. Pain came in waves. So did anger. Around 3 in the morning, I lay staring at the ceiling of a rental that smelled like detergent and other people's vacations, and I remembered a rule I had learned in the army. 1 copy is none, 2 copies is 1, 3 copies is survival. I reached for my laptop and opened my sent folder. My fingers shook so badly it took 3 tries to search the date, September 15, 2024, 8:46 p.m. There it was, an email to myself and an old JAG contact from my army days. Subject line, PUA revocation signed. Attachment scanned PDF. Signed, notarized. Dated 2 days before surgery, before the final signature, before the deed, before Gerald decided my unconscious body was convenient. I forwarded it to Brennan with 1 line. Found it. Look at the date. Then I lay back against the pillows, trembling from pain, exhaustion, and something that felt almost like power. They had locked me out of my home. They had moved my file box. They had called me confused, dramatic, medicated, selfish. But the thing they thought they had buried had been waiting in my sent folder the whole time. Proof that Gerald Vale's authority was dead before he used it. Chapter 4. The family starts spinning the lie by 7 the next morning. Lewis Brennan had already turned my scent folder discovery into a weapon. His call came before I had finished the first round of pills Tamara had lined up on the rental's kitchen counter. I was sitting in the recliner with a pillow behind my shoulders and a blanket over my knees, trying not to move unless absolutely necessary. Tamara answered the video call and set the laptop on the coffee table. Brennan looked more awake than either of us. "That email changes the case," he said. "Not just because the revocation exists, but because the metadata places it before the deed, before the final signing, and before your father used that old power of attorney as cover." I listened while he laid out what we now had. My father's voicemail, the old Army power of attorney, the signed and notarized revocation from September 15th, the email timestamp at 8:46 p.m., the deed with a signature that was not mine. Nadine Keller's notary journal claiming I appeared at 2:13 p.m., Dr. Ortiz's anesthesia record proving I was intubated at 2:13 p.m., the settlement statement. The money trail, Roy Maddox, Pell and Harbor Title Services. Brennan did not sound excited. Good lawyers rarely do when something is serious. He sounded exact. "We file quiet title today. That asks the court to correct ownership and declare the deed void. We also record a lis pendens against Oakline Terrace so Roy cannot sell it, refinance it, or pretend this is clean title. I am sending the criminal referral to Detective Ana Reyes at Dayton Financial Crimes. I am also notifying Great Lakes title underwriters and instructing Pell and Harbor to preserve every closing email, ID copy, sign-in sheet, title note, and notary communication." Tamara looked at me. "That sounds like a lot." "It is," Brennan said, "and it should be. A quiet title action fixes the ownership question. A lis pendens is the red flag that tells the world the property is in dispute. Your family wanted this handled quietly. That option is gone." By noon, Mara Jensen at the Montgomery County Recorder's Office confirmed the lis pendens had been recorded. It took less than an hour for Roy to find out. It took less than 10 minutes after that for my father to call my mother. And then Carol began doing what Carol did best. She did not tell the truth. She made a truth-shaped substitute and started handing it to people who wanted an easier story. My phone lit up all afternoon. A cousin texted that Mom said I was confused from medication. A church friend of Carol's sent a message about forgiveness and family unity. Someone from Brooks' shower group wrote that weddings were stressful for everyone, and maybe I should not take things so personally. Carol had told people I had agreed to help, then panicked after surgery. She said the family had only borrowed against the condo. She said I was jealous of Brooks' attention. She said pain medication made me unstable. My mother had always known how to turn concern into a leash. Aunt Ellen called around 4. Ellen Vale was 70, my father's older sister, and one of the few people in that family who could still make Gerald shut up by saying his full name. "Corinne," she said carefully, "your mother says you offered to help Brooke, then changed your mind." I closed my eyes. I did not have the strength for another performance. "I am going to send you 2 things, Aunt Ellen. Read them before you decide what you believe." I sent the voicemail transcript and 2 lines from 2 documents. Notary journal. Corinne Vale personally appeared at 2:13 p.m. anesthesia record. Patient intubated, prone under general anesthesia at 2:13 p.m. The silence on the phone changed. "Your father said you signed?" "At 2:13 p.m. I was intubated." Ellen did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was lower. "That is not confusion, honey. That is evidence." The next morning, Brennan arranged limited access to Oakline Terrace for an inventory. He made it very clear to Roy's side that the deed was under dispute, a preservation demand had been served, and any interference with my personal property would create more damages. A deputy agreed to be present for civil standby, not because the court had fixed anything yet, but because no one wanted a post-surgery woman and an angry ICU nurse meeting Roy's people alone in a hallway. Tamara drove me there. Seeing Oakline Terrace from the parking lot hurt more than I expected. The brick building looked exactly the same. Same balconies, same mailboxes, same little ornamental trees by the entrance. It was obscene how calm a place could look after becoming the center of a crime. Someone had added a secondary lock. Tamara saw it too. They changed the lock, photograph it. She did inside. My recovery bed still sat in the living room. The folded blanket was where I had left it. The side table still held bottled water and the little basket of lip balm, tissues, and pill organizers I had prepared like a nurse preparing a patient room. The bathroom rails were still on the wall. The shower chair was still in the tub. The medication chart was still taped to the refrigerator. But the freezer had been unplugged. The meals I had cooked and labeled before surgery were swollen, leaking, ruined. Tamara opened the closet where I kept the file box. It had been dragged out and shoved back crooked. My deployment binder had been opened. The mortgage folder was bent. The paper copy of the revocation was not where it should have been. Tamara took photos of everything. Every drawer, every moved folder, every scuff by the file box, every sign that someone had gone looking for something. I took my laptop, 2 changes of clothes, medication backups, copies of my mortgage statements, and my army paperwork. I did not take the recovery bed. I could barely stand long enough to watch it. On the way back to the rental, Brooke called. I almost let it ring out. Then I answered. Her voice sounded smaller than it had in years. Corinne, did they really use your condo money for my venue? I stared through the windshield at traffic on the road ahead. Yes, Mom said you offered. No, Evan heard his dad talking about Alice Pendens and financial crimes. Then Evan heard correctly. Brooke started breathing faster. I did not know about Roy. I did not know about Dad's debt. I did not know about the signature. Did you ask where the money came from? She did not answer. Brooke. Her voice broke. No, I did not want to. That was the first honest thing she had said. I did not comfort her. Not because I hated her. Because comfort would have let her step around the truth too early. Venue deposit came from the proceeds. Your dress balance came from the proceeds. The Cancun block came from the proceeds. $152,000 went to cover Dad's debt to Roy. That is what your wedding is sitting on, she whispered. Oh my God, no, Brooke, this one is not God. That evening, Gerald came alone. No flowers, no casserole, no Carol to soften the edges. He looked older in the doorway, suit wrinkled, face gray. Riverside Commons collapsed, he said after 5 minutes of pretending he was there to check on my pain. The lender pulled out. Roy covered things longer than he should have. I owed him $152,000. I watched him from the recliner. And my condo was easier than telling the Caldwells you were broke. His jaw tightened. I was trying to protect this family. You were trying to protect your image. His eyes flashed, then dimmed. Brooke cannot walk into that family with some cheap wedding. Do you know how Edmund Caldwell talks about people who fail? No, I said. But I know how you treat people you think will survive being used. He leaned forward. Drop the lawsuit until after the wedding. Give me 19 days. Then we will fix it. You sold the place I was supposed to recover in. I said we will fix it. You used a revoked power of attorney. You put my name on a deed while I was unconscious. You used Brooke's wedding to hide your debt. His voice hardened. If you keep going, you will destroy your sister. If criminal charges come out of this, I could lose everything. And if you embarrass this family in front of the Caldwells, do not expect to still have one. There it was. The begging had failed, so the threat came out. I looked at him and felt something inside me settle. I did not break this family. I stopped paying for the lie. He left without saying goodbye. By then, the Caldwells were asking questions. Evan wanted answers from Brooke. Patricia Caldwell had remembered Carol telling her I had generously contributed to the wedding. Edmund Caldwell was furious that his family might be tied to an event funded by property fraud. Brennan called that night to warn me. The court can handle the deed. Detective Reyes can handle the fraud. You do not have to confront them publicly. If I do not, I said, my mother will keep telling everyone I am confused, jealous, medicated, and cruel. That confrontation may change your family permanently. It already changed. They just wanted me to be the last one to know. So I made the folders, one for Gerald and Carol, one for the Caldwells, one for Brooke and Evan. I did not pack them with emotion. I packed them like evidence. The voicemail transcript, the deed, the 2:13 p.m. notary entry, the 2:13 p.m. anesthesia record, the signed revocation with the email timestamp, the settlement statement and Brennan's short legal letter explaining why the deed could not stand. I practiced standing with the cane in front of the rental's narrow mirror. My legs shook, my back burned. Tamara stood nearby but did not help unless I asked. She understood. I did not need to look strong. I needed to be steady long enough to tell the truth. Outside, my phone kept lighting up with messages from family. Inside, the folders sat on the table in clean stacks. By the time I touched the page marked 2:13 p.m., I understood something simple. Tomorrow I would not need to yell. I would only need to read the time. Chapter 5. The rehearsal dinner where to. 13 p.m. spoke for Meebrook Haven Country Club. Looked exactly like the kind of place my father had been trying to buy his way into. Warm lights glowed against polished wood. A stone fireplace burned at the end of the dining room. White flowers spilled over long tables, and champagne glasses waited beside folded napkins like nothing ugly had ever happened in a room that expensive. Gerald had wanted the Caldwells to see this and think the Velas belonged there. Instead, they were going to see what he had spent my home to hide. Tamara drove me and stayed close as I walked in with my cane. Every step pulled at my back. My brace pressed against my ribs. I could feel sweat under my sweater even though the lobby was cool. Carol intercepted me before I reached the dining room. She wore pearls and the smile she used at church when someone was watching. "Not tonight, Corinne," she whispered. "If you love your sister, you will not do this tonight." I looked at her face and waited for the question that never came. She did not ask if I was in pain. She did not ask if I had a safe place to recover. She did not ask who signed my name. She only wanted to know if I would stay quiet. "If you wanted a quiet rehearsal dinner," I said, "you should not have put your hands on my name." Her smile disappeared. Inside, Gerald stood near the head table in a tailored suit that could not quite hide how tired he looked. Brooke sat beside Evan Caldwell, pale in her rehearsal dress. Edmund Caldwell watched the room with a dealer's polished stillness. Patricia Caldwell's eyes moved from my cane to the folder in my hand. Gerald saw me and immediately lifted his glass. "Before dinner," he said, "I want to say something about family." The room settled, forks lowered. People smiled because they expected sentiment. Gerald gave it to them. He talked about sacrifice, about love, about what families do for one another. He called Brooke a blessing. He called Evan a fine young man. Then he looked at me with that old fatherly pride he could put on like a jacket. "And my oldest, Corinne," he said, "our strong one. A surgical nurse, a veteran, always the person who understands what it means to give." There it was again, strong one, the phrase he had used as a key for years, turning it in every lock until I opened. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. The room blurred for half a second from pain, but Tamara was near the door. She did not rush forward. She knew I needed to stand on my own for this. My voice came out calm. "Since we are talking about sacrifice, I think everyone should know what paid for tonight." Gerald's face hardened. "Corinne." I opened the folder. This is the transcript of the voicemail my father left after I woke up from an 8-hour and 40-minute spinal fusion. In it, he said he sold my condo for Brooke's wedding because I was unconscious, so he handled the signature. I set the first page on the table. "This is the deed. It has my name on it." The room went very quiet. "This is the notary journal from Nadine Keller. It says I personally appeared before her on September 17th at 2:13 p.m. I placed the next page down. "And this is my anesthesia record from Kettering Memorial. At 2:13 p.m., Dr. Helena Ortiz had me intubated, face down, under general anesthesia, while Dr. Mercer was still working on my spine." Patricia Caldwell leaned forward. I kept going. "This is the revocation of power of attorney I signed and notarized 2 days before surgery. The email metadata shows I scanned it at 8:46 p.m. on September 15th. My father received a paper copy. My mother saw him take it. Carol made a small sound, but no words came. This is the settlement statement. My condo was worth about $486,000. Roy Maddox bought it all cash for $318,000. $152,000 went toward my father's private debt to Roy. Other payments went to Brookhaven, Brooke's Dress, and the Cancun block." I looked at Gerald then, not as a daughter asking why, as a witness identifying the person across the table. "At 2:13 p.m., this deed says I stood in front of a notary. At 2:13 p.m., this hospital record says a machine was breathing for me, so I would like someone to explain whose hand signed my name." No one moved, then Gerald slammed his glass down hard enough to spill champagne. "How dare you bring this here? This is your sister's rehearsal dinner." "No," I said. "This is the room you bought with my house." Carol stood, shaking her head. "She just had surgery. She is on medication. She is misunderstanding everything." Patricia Caldwell picked up the anesthesia record. Her voice was colder than the silverware. "Are you saying the hospital chart is confused too?" Carol looked at her, then at Gerald. Aunt Ellen stood from the second table. "Carol called me and said Corinne agreed to help." "Carol, did you know about the revocation?" My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence did what all her phone calls had tried to prevent. Brooke stood next. She was trembling. For the first time, she looked less like a bride and more like my little sister. Someone who had found out the room beneath her feet was not a floor but a lie. "I did not sign anything," she said. "I did not know all of this, but I did not ask either." Her eyes found mine. "I did not want to know where the money came from because I wanted the wedding. Corinne did not ruin my wedding. Our parents did, and I should have asked." Evan pulled his hand back from the table slowly, not cruelly, but like a man who had just realized he was sitting inside evidence. Edmund Caldwell stood. "This wedding is postponed until this is resolved," Patricia added. Our family will not step into a marriage built on stolen money. Gerald looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Carol's face had collapsed into something raw and frightened. All their soft words, all their concern, all their stories about pain medication and jealousy, they could not survive one clean timeline. I did not stay to watch them bleed socially. That had never been the point. I gathered my cane and walked out slowly. My back burned. My legs shook. Tamara opened the door but did not touch me until I reached the lobby. "You did it," she said. "No," I said, breathing through the pain. "The record did. The legal part did not end that night. Court never moves as fast as anger wants it to. And no judge fixed my life in a single dramatic hearing." Over the next few months, the case moved through filings, declarations, title reviews, and interviews. But the evidence was too clean to bury. Roy Maddox eventually agreed to a consent judgment instead of defending a deed tied to an impossible notary entry. The deed was declared void, and corrected title put Oakline Terrace back in my name. Detective Ana Reyes interviewed Roy about the all-cash price, the debt offset, and why he bought property from the father of a woman who was unconscious in surgery. Nadine Keller was subpoenaed, and the State Notary Board opened an investigation. Her commission was later suspended pending review. Pell and Harbor Title Services was audited. Great Lakes Title Underwriters, through claims counsel Caleb Royer, settled my legal fees and damages because an impossible notary acknowledgement is the kind of disaster underwriters do not like seeing explained in court. Gerald faced a criminal referral. I did not need to narrate every consequence to make it real. The case had left the dinner table. It had left the family group chat. It was no longer a family matter. It was a property fraud investigation. Carol lost the one thing she had tried hardest to protect: the story. The people she had called stopped calling me dramatic and started avoiding her. Brooke postponed the wedding indefinitely. She and Evan had to decide whether a life could begin after a lie that large. Brooke and I did not become close overnight. One apology does not rebuild a sisterhood. But it was the first honest brick. Weeks later, Tamara drove me back to Oakline Terrace. This time, I had corrected title and new keys. The recovery bed was still there, and so were the rails I had installed before surgery. The freezer meals were ruined. The file box had been disturbed. A few pieces of my life had been touched by people who had no right to touch them, but the door opened for me. I changed the locks, then I placed the corrected title on the kitchen counter and stood there in the quiet. I did not replay the voicemail. It had done its job. I saved it in an evidence folder, not in my heart. I did not announce forgiveness. I did not announce revenge either. I simply understood that being the strong one did not mean being the family bank. It did not mean being the door everyone else could open. Strength was not silence. Strength was knowing when to turn the lock. In my living room, there was no Carol saying it was just a condo. No Gerald saying family sacrifice. No stranger holding a pen over my name. There was only the click of a new lock, the ache in my spine, and the truth sitting on my counter. My name was back where it belonged. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have exposed them at the rehearsal dinner? Or let the court handle it quietly? And if your own father sold your home while you were on an operating table, would you press charges? Tell me in the comments, because I still wonder how many people would call that family, and how many would finally call it theft.